Hello. As you've noticed, I've changed the location because I wanted to sit in a more comfortable chair. Today's video is ironically brought to you by a 1984 declassification of all the weapons that the USSR had according to what the US knew at the time and what they were willing to reveal to the civilian populace at that time. Was it 83? Second thing is a translated and slightly paraphrased copy of Tang Tzu's Art of War. I can't pronounce his name, it's Chinese. Let's just get on to the video. So for those of you who don't know, I'm a 20-year-old who lives in America, and the person that made this video that I'm kind of pulling apart, or at least attempting to, is Mike Sparks. And people can't quite exactly figure out where he lives or who he's from. Some people say he's Turkish, some people say he's a guy who got rejected from the Marines in the US. And as you can see from that little bit of the video that we just saw, he has made 30 different comparisons between the Abrams and other tanks. So I think he has a slight obsession with the Abrams, and he either likes it, wants to compare it to everything to show how good it is, or he hates it and wants to compare it to everything to show how bad it is. Well, the only things I know that are better are maybe the Challenger and the Leopard. Leopard's probably better known. Maybe the Leopard 2. No, the M60 isn't known. The T-55, the Tiger tank, the Sherman, the Centurion, maybe? I don't know. The Centurion? Are we going up against the Centurion? Is that what's going to happen? So we're going to put up one of the most expensive tanks ever made against a tank that is vastly cheaper, was developed before the 50s, has no composite armor, has no ERA, does not have a laser rangefinder, does not have a stabilizer as far as I know, or at least a computer stabilizer, does not have any recent engine that's been made in the past 60 years, and it doesn't even use sabots. Does it have a smoothbore gun? So let's just hope that the Abrams wins, because if it doesn't, this isn't going to make any sense. It's just not going to make any sense. Now, I'm aware that I'm a bit of an amateur at this, but at least you can see me and hear me so that you can know who's making the point and understand who exactly is more or less talking to you via this YouTube video. Now, I know that it's very annoying to play footage at double speed because it sounds really awful, but he's playing at a very slow speed, and you don't necessarily need to see every single thing he says, because if you look at it, you'll notice that he's just basically reading off Wikipedia or very basic sources like that. He's not looking through like a book on tanks like I might, if I could find my book. All I have is this damn thing I can find right now. All my other stuff's in storage or at different houses. This is what happens when you have too many books. So I'm basically having to rely off the internet at this point when it comes to information for tanks. So bear with me. We'll see where this video goes, and if his points make sense or don't. This is a false comparison. The Abrams and the Tiger II may have similar weights, but they're completely different tanks. The Abrams has way more technology, does not break down as much in warfare. In fact, the Tiger II never actually went into war, and if it did, it didn't actually see a lot of combat. Not enough to be noticed, really. Meanwhile, the Abrams is constantly in combat, is constantly noticed, and constantly yields really good results, even if it's against inferior targets. Well, of course the Abrams mobility is better. It doesn't break down all the time, and it's much faster than the Tiger is. The engine's way more advanced, and the only time it needs to stop is when it runs out of fuel, which isn't a problem because the American military has scary amounts of fuel, scary amounts of trucks to bring that fuel around in, and we've had a good logistical train since World War I. We've had a solid, functional logistical train for 100 years or more. And the reason why that went past World War I, why the 100 years goes past 1917, because it's 2015 right now, is because we've had a solid logistical train about as long as we've had solid functional factories that were capable of making materials for war. So basically, right after the Civil War, we've had a solid logistical train. We can get stuff wherever we want it, whenever we want it. This is what happens when you take a bunch of little bullshit things and you compare them against a bunch of other little bullshit things. And all it has to do is create more bullshit things that one thing has over the other for it to win. Because think about this. If the Abrams tank shoots something, it dies. It just rolls over and it dies. If the Tiger II shoots something, it probably won't die. It might, but there's no guarantees. In fact, a Tiger II tank might not even dent any of the tanks that are currently in service right now. It may not even damage a T-55 for all I know. The current model of Abrams has at least 3 guns on it that are not the main gun. It has at least 2 M2s on it and at least one 7.62. All 3 of these ammos are extremely available and extremely common and extremely effective, with very modern propellant, very modern ammo in the use of them, and very modern barrels. The ammo fired from the smoothbore gun of the Abrams is actually used by a number of countries, is mass-produced around the entire world. That's a plus for the ammo. The other plus is the fact that the ammo the Americans specifically use is extremely effective, extremely dense, and extremely fast, which means that technically speaking, it's the best ammo from any tank in any time period, period. It has no counterpart. I'm not going to comment on that little aspect. It's just not enough nonsense to be entertaining, and it's not enough logical fact to be interesting and to learn anything from. Well, that was extremely obvious and pretty much useless. A 4-component armor is vastly more complicated than a 1-component armor that uses the same materials that are used in freaking pickup trucks at the moment. 2 materials that are dense and strong, that can deflect rounds or stop them, and 2 extremely effective materials that are very good at slowing down rounds or causing them to flip over and hit things sideways. Fascinating. So now I know the best tanks are. They're the ones from World War I that carried more than 5 people, because they needed so many people just to run them, because they were too big and too overcomplicated. Yeah, and what happens if the opponent cannot see you, but they can totally hear you because you're a Tiger II tank and you make scary amounts of noise because your trucks are from before the 50s? Why am I not surprised that the faster and much more effective ammo wears out the barrel faster? Why does that not surprise me? I wonder what those 3 machine guns for. Could they have possibly been to make up for the fact that the barrel uses much stronger ammunition and possibly wears out faster? And the fact that the Abrams 2 doesn't break down as much as the Tiger II tank should not have played a bigger factor to this whole endurance thing than how often the barrel for the Tiger tank wears out compared to the Abrams tank. Like, that's a much bigger factor. If your tank can't go anywhere, is it still a tank or is it a bunker? You said that the Abrams has better firepower, better mobility, and that it has better armor. How can any of these factors be equivalent to its ability to be an engineering vehicle? Did you know that the Churchill tank that was for engineering actually had a variant that used a completely different gun? Did you know that some engineering tanks don't even have turrets, and if they do, they don't really use the turret for anything? It's also rather common to replace the turret with something that's bigger, but not as good as killing tanks, so you can blow up things that are in the way. You know, like buildings. What about inflation? The money in Germany before the 50s is completely different from the money that was used to finance the Abrams development cycle. Also, you need to understand that the money that exists now is worth a lot less than the money that exists back then. You used to be able to buy a can of soup for 5 cents. Now you can buy it for like $1 or maybe $1.20. While we're at it, I'm pretty confident that Saudi Arabia, Jordan... While we're at it, I'm pretty confident that Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq all use the Abrams, along with at least maybe 1 or 2 other countries. The tank's way more common than you think it is, and it's way more effective. Why, God? Why? Why does this person exist? Why? You yourself admitted, you Sparky, you, Mike Sparks, wherever the hell your name is, you admitted that the Abrams has better stealth, better armor, it has better engine, it has better firepower, and better armor. Those are all the things that matter. Nothing else that you factored in compares to those. The number of people it holds is not comparable to the firepower, the engine, the armor, the stealth, or any of those other things I mentioned. So you're basically telling me the Abrams is vastly better than the Tiger II, but you have somehow gotten them to tie. That means that you've developed a system where you can add a bunch of little bullshit statistics to your system and get things to tie when they shouldn't. Let me put it this way. The entire armor corps moved in to engage the enemy in the dead of the night. Unbeknownst to us, they could see us and we could not. Dozens of Tiger II tanks were engaged from the north, but we could not tell what tanks were firing at us, if they were rockets that were being fired at us, or what we were actually being hit by. We simply lost tank after tank after tank, having no idea where it was coming from, at a considerable distance that we could not even see. When we actually saw a tank and we fired upon it to attempt to engage it, the rounds had no effect. We could not damage the tank in any way. We fired several rockets, we attempted to engage it with artillery and with a couple planes, but again, we could not manage to actually damage it or harm it in any way. Giving up, we tried to turn around, but we realized that the tank could outrun us and easily caught up with us. So, the enemy quickly surrounded us, pinned us, forced us to surrender, and we could do absolutely nothing as our tanks broke down and we were surrounded. In all other words, we were completely helpless and our tanks were completely worthless to us. It would have been a recreation of the invasion of Iraq by the NATO powers, only it would have been much, much faster, much, much more bloody, and the Germans would have been utterly, completely annihilated. This is why we don't use technology invented before 1950 against technology that's invented by world power and used decades later. This entire video that I had to review is complete and total bullshit, and if anyone wants to prove that it's not, I can explain to you detail by detail why it is in another video, where I can comment or whatever it is you need me to do. I'm ready for this. And if I see one copyright violation saying that I can't parody another person's work, I'm going to be pissed and there's going to be an outcry.